People often ask what I'd suggest for a cheap, new TV that's compatible with retro gaming consoles. It's a hard question to answer as TV technology is constantly changing, but as of now, there's two TVs that keep coming up in conversation. This is going to be a quick overview and comparison of each. I definitely want to start out by saying that I'm sure there's plenty of other inexpensive TVs out there that perform just as good as these, and I really wish I had time to test them all, but at the moment I have access to these two, which just so happen to be two brands and two model TVs that have been talked about for over a year now. They're both 43-inch 4K TVs that are around the $300 price range, give or take, and I'm going to be walking through each of their features and how they compare to each other, at least from the perspective of a retro gamer. So let's jump right in and see the differences. First, let's start with the basics. Inputs. The TCL I'm testing is model 43S517, a 2018 TV. It's got 3 HDMI ports and a 3.5mm jack that breaks out composite video and analog audio. Unfortunately, this TV doesn't have any component video inputs, so we'll only be able to test digital on it, because I'm definitely not going to bother dealing with composite video signals. Next is the LG UK6300. It also has 3 HDMI ports, 2 on the side and 1 more in the back. And look at that, LG is still supporting component video, plus composite video via the leftmost component input. I like that LG offers a choice of both rear-facing and side-facing HDMI inputs, and of course I love that it supports component video. As a result, I'd say the LG TV wins this round. Next, let's talk about display lag. I was able to test multiple resolutions on both TVs using the Time Sleuth, a lag testing device available from danceprojects.com. Both TVs performed really well, and I was able to get some great results. Just to be clear, the lag we're testing is the delay that the TV's processing adds before the image is displayed on the screen. A good way to demonstrate this is splitting the signal between a CRT and a flat panel. The difference between the two displays would be the amount of lag added to the total signal. The Time Sleuth is a much better way to test that though, so we'll use that instead. Let's get started. The first thing I'd like to mention is the only thing you needed to do on the LG TV in order to get the latency down is simply turn on game mode. Whereas on the TCL TV, you have to use a Roku app, connect to the Wi-Fi, connect to the TV, go into advanced settings, and disable more processing there. Now, maybe newer model TVs will have this changed, but it's still something that annoyed the hell out of me with the TCL TV, and thought that I'd mention it. Either way, once you get both TVs fully into their game modes, they both performed great. The TCL was in the 15 millisecond range of lag, and the LG was even in the 11 millisecond range, both for progressive scan resolutions. One interesting thing that I found was that with interlaced resolutions, both TVs, as do most flat-screen TVs, performed much worse. The de-interlacing brought the LG's lag up to 40 milliseconds and the TCL's lag over 60 milliseconds. So once again, it's something you should expect in all flat-screen TVs, but whenever you have interlaced resolutions going into it, there's definitely going to be a lot more latency added, even if you turn off all of the extra processing and features. In the end, I guess you could say that with progressive scan resolutions, the LG averages 12 milliseconds and the TCL averages about 15 milliseconds of display latency. I'm not sure if that would ever equal a real-life performance boost, but the lower rating, and more importantly, the fact that you don't need an app to tweak the settings, makes me call the LG a winner in this round. One question I get almost as much as how much lag does this TV have is the TV compatible with the open source scan converter in 5x modes? I wanted to try both of these TVs with the Super Nintendo in all modes to see how they compared. I connected my SNES and fired up Super Mario World, and then went to try each of the different modes of the OSSC, including the 240p pass-through mode. For the record, no, my Super Nintendo does not have a de-jitter board installed in it, so this really is as good of a test as you could get. In cycling through the different resolutions, I found that sometimes you might have to force 4x3 mode, But overall, everything looked great, especially the 5x mode, which was really sharp, and it looked like it was being processed properly. I didn't spend hours with these TVs, just enough to know that they worked. Maybe if I played a game for hours on end, it might drop signal a bit or something, but overall, it just looked like it worked and certainly didn't have any of the compatibility issues that I've seen over the years with the OSSC, and especially 5x mode. I thought both of the TVs looked great, but for whatever reason, certain scenes looked better on one than on the other. I'm pretty sure that has to do with calibration, and I'd be willing to bet that if I spent some time trying to calibrate the panel, they'd both look great. But overall, I could definitely say that all of the modes of the OSSC on my Super Nintendo seemed to work great on both panels. Since the LG TV had component video inputs, I was really curious to see if it was compatible with the HD Retrovision cables, and to see if it would process the image correctly as 240p and not incorrectly as 480i. Unfortunately, it looks like they're not compatible at all, which means if you're looking for a cheap way to get your older consoles into this TV, you're going to need to find a different method. Now, the performance of a TV is obviously much more important than how it looks when it's off, but there's a few things about both of these that might factor into which one you might prefer. First, I love how the TCL's front bezel looks. While I don't care how thin, or more specifically how deep a flat screen TV is, it's my opinion that a thinner bezel around the edges will make a TV pop a lot more. The one huge disadvantage of this is they're extremely brittle. I even bent the bezel once when adjusting its position when it was mounted on my wall. Seriously, I actually bent the metal and the screen bent with it. Luckily, I was able to bend it back and it didn't seem to do any permanent damage, but definitely pay attention to this if you're going to mount it to a wall. Take your time and do it right, and if you need to take it off the wall to then adjust the different levers on it and put it back on the wall, do it that way. Don't grab it from the top and pull even a little bit, because that's all I did in order to bend the top. I'm sure if you just set it once and leave it, you'll never have a problem, but that was a huge issue for me last year. Every Sunday during football season, I'd take the TV off the wall, mount the legs on it, and bring it into my living room so we could have every game playing at the same time for the first run of Sunday games. Yeah, I know it's strange, a huge nerd that also loves football, but whatever, I'm weird, deal with it. Alternatively, the LG has plastic that's even across the whole back, making it feel much more durable. While I wouldn't exactly call the bezel on the LG TV thick, it's definitely bigger than the TCL's. When I measured, the bezel around the TCL TV came in just over 7mm, and depending on the angle that you're looking at the LG TV, you could either call it 13.5 or 16.5mm. So my opinion on this is the TCL TV definitely looks better, but I'd be much more comfortable taking the LG on and off of my wall on Sundays for football. So I guess I'd have to call this one a tie. I know this video is supposed to be a review from the perspective of retro gamers, but I know many people, including myself, are going to use this TV as more than just a gaming monitor. So I wanted to talk about the apps that are built in and how they work on each TV. If you're a fan of Roku, the TCL is a fully functional Roku device and supports all of the same apps. Using one remote for everything was convenient, and the apps performed good enough. Unfortunately, it didn't work as well with other streaming boxes, and this is where the LG really shined. I just connected my Apple TV, turned on CRC control, and the TV can now be controlled with the Apple TV remote. Volume works perfect, as does turning the TV off, but check this out. Even if you power the TV off on a different input, as soon as you power on the Apple TV, or I guess any other CRC device, not only does the TV automatically turn on, but it switches to the correct input. I know most TVs are supposed to have that function, but it just doesn't work in most of them, including the TCL TV. When I tried it with that one, it didn't do anything no matter what I tried. Now maybe the devices I tried just weren't compatible with the TCL, but I think it's a safe bet if you just planned on having to use two remotes with things like a cable box, a Fire Stick, or an Apple TV. For the record, the LG TV did have its own apps, and they worked perfectly fine. I just wouldn't buy that TV for the apps. I think, in my personal opinion, you would buy the TCL expecting to use the Roku apps, and buy the LG TV to use another device. Once again, there's nothing wrong with the apps on the LG TV, it just didn't feel as snappy, you couldn't fast forward as easy. It's pretty much every complaint I have about every single streaming box, so it's not limited to the LG TV. I could probably spend a lot more time with these things, going over things like HDR support and black levels and viewing angles, but these are budget TVs, and you really need to curb your expectations when buying them. So if you really want my blunt opinion, the speakers suck, the viewing angles suck, the way it's lit kind of looks weird, but it still looks great for video games, and especially when you consider that it's only $300. And I think price is something that you really need to focus on here. I mean, you could use this thing as a PC monitor, leave it on 24/7, and if it dies in 2 years, who cares? It's still cheaper than most 4K PC monitors. Also, burn-in? Who cares about burn-in? It's a $300 TV. Play your game, it'll look good, it has low lag, both of them have low lag, and they're going to be enjoyable experiences that you just don't have to worry about. And although my OLED TV has a no burn-in whatsoever, that's still something that always sits in the back of my mind when I'm playing, and I always make sure to take breaks and turn the screensaver on, whereas this, I'll have the luxury of just playing and not caring. Because while I certainly value my money, if you get a couple years out of a high-performing $300 TV, it's my opinion that you've won. So I guess my thoughts on the overall quality of both of these TVs is that you get more than what you pay for, at least in my opinion. If you're playing games, hook up some external speakers or put on some headphones and it'll be a great experience. And as far as TV watching goes, I think it's more than enough for a bedroom or a spare room. So once again, just my opinion, but considering the about $300 price range, I would call the quality very, very good. So I guess my conclusion on both of these is that for me personally, in my setup, I prefer the LG TV. I like that I feel safer taking it on and off the wall. I love how it interfaces with CRC devices, so I only need one remote when I'm just watching TV and not gaming. And I don't know if that extra couple of milliseconds of lag will make a difference, but I guess peace of mind knowing that it has a little bit more lag is nice. But that doesn't mean that I would call it an overall winner. I think that anybody watching this video could probably have their own opinion and have their own situation in which one or the other TV would be a good choice. Overall, I wouldn't use either of them as my main TV because I love movies, I love gaming, and I really want the best that I could afford for my main TV. But as a second TV or a gaming monitor or just a big PC monitor, I love them. The only thing to note is that I've tested only the 43-inch versions, and according to certain test websites, the larger versions do perform similar, and I have tested one of the 65-inch TCLs that also performed pretty much identical. So if you're getting a different size than the ones that I talked about, maybe just double check or pick yourself up a Time Sleuth and test yourself. Well, that's it for this video. If you liked what you saw, please consider supporting this channel either on YouTube, Patreon, or any of the other backing methods, because without any of my supporters, none of these videos would happen. Also, if you'd like to be kept in the loop of everything going on in the retro gaming scene, check out my weekly podcast, as well as interviews, reviews, and all the other videos I post. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.